Just going back to your school. So September comes around. How how did the first semester, how was that for you? And how did this reaction that you have affect your education?
So yeah, that goes back to the doctor situation because I
Okay.
was trying to find a doctor who would listen to me
Hmm.
because the numbness was continuing, had chest pains again, and I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I need to find a doctor who will listen to me. And I found a doctor who listened to me, and she said, you know what? This isn't no, this isn't normal. Like
Hmm.
this is an adverse reaction, and until we explore this further, until we diagnose it, um, you shouldn't be getting your second. It doesn't make sense medically. It doesn't make sense. They don't know what caused it, and they don't know if it could get worse or not.
So in the hospital, did they acknowledge that it was the vaccine that,
They did.
or
I
not
wouldn't say
really?
they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they did. Um, they weren't like going on about it, but
Hmm.
they didn't say it wasn't
Okay.
cause. Although I did have one situation where I spoke to a psychologist that I'd spoken to like for a good amount of time that really helped me. I returned to her because, as I'll explain, for my first semester, mental health was really bad, and I just needed help with like social stuff. And when I told her my story, she went like, you're in psychology. You know that correlation doesn't equal causation. So how could you even say that this reaction was from the vaccine? And I get that correlation doesn't equal
Hmm.
causation. That's science. I 100% understand that. It's my program. But it was just completely invalidating. So then I
Wow.
had to defend myself to a psychologist
To
who's supposed to be there validating me, and I had to explain myself and argue with her that hey, like there is enough of a correlation for it to be explored further. Like it makes
100%.
sense. I start to feel crazy. Found a doctor, listened to me, and she wrote me. The university had like standard forms, and she wrote me a letter on the form, and they returned it, and they said, cool, you are accepted, your exemption is approved for 1 semester, and after
Okay.
first semester it will expire.
Because it only your reaction, you'll be fine after the semester, right?
Yeah,
It only applies
it
for the
only
first.
my theory was that they wanted to know that my symptoms had disappeared. So I thought,
Yeah.
oh, like maybe in a few months it will have disappeared. And I didn't even want to think about that because I was still
Right.
scared of getting my second at that
Hmm.
point because I hadn't gotten a diagnosis yet.
Hmm.
Um, so I was still nervous, but all I could think about was, okay, I have my first semester. I just have to think about right now.
Hmm.
And so I started going to school, and I had in-person classes, and they were great. Actually, like that was one thing I did have that academic thing. So a condition of my exemption was that they gave me a box of rapid tests, and they said you need to test yourself twice a week. Um, do the rapid test, take a photo of it, write the date, twice a week, and that allows you to like go into campus. It was like on an online system.
Okay.
So I was not the most comfortable with this. It just
Hmm.
didn't seem very secure. And, the whole idea that someone with no symptoms is endangering others, because, prior to that, a year ago, I was with all the other students and we were all equal before the vaccine even existed. And we were all equal. We were all like everyone else. Nobody was said, you're endangering others. That was not a thing. All of a sudden they told me like, you need to do these tests because we need to see if you're like asymptomatic. Um, and there's a whole like mental ordeal with that because that really got to me eventually because it's so shaming.
Yeah, I know a lot of schools, for anyone who did get an exemption accepted, that was one of the conditions was testing, and it's it's another reason why we are fighting this, because we shouldn't have to upload any sort of medical information to a school, especially a test twice a week. And why doesn't everyone else have to do it? Why do you just have to do it? It's really awful.
It's implying that you're not as safe as everyone else.
Yeah.
And I knew in myself that wasn't true,
Hmm.
but it starts to get to you.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, I started to worry, like, maybe I am contagious, you know? Like, it eventually,
Yeah.
like, after a few months, it started to, like, get into my head. Like, that's so psychological. I call this psychological warfare, this entire mandate situation, because they just get to you and they make you feel crazy. Um, so I was doing these tests and I never missed a day because in
Wow.
my mind, I'm thinking in my mind all the time was that my exemption was going to expire and I needed to create a perfect track record of myself. So I did the most anti-CSUN thing on earth where I just complied,
Mhm.
sent in my testing twice a week, always wore my mask above my nose, did not mess with anything because I wanted a perfect track record.
Mhm.
I had two campus clubs that like explicitly asked. The first one, the mandate was at the beginning of the semester, and I had to talk to the person who organizes it. And they were like, "Oh, are you vaccinated?" And I had to tell them I have an exemption. And they were like, "Cool, you're fine to come because you're being tested." Again, you're safe to be here, but only because you're being tested for COVID, which
Mhm.
implies that you're not as safe as everyone else.
Mhm. Just want to tie this in a little bit. Like you said, this is the most anti CSAUNT thing that you could have done. This is Your story is a very good example of why we are so against getting an exemption because like you had to go through, you are constantly begging the school for permission to attend campus, to go to your clubs, to whatever it is, and you're willing to do whatever it is that they tell you to do so you can just get your education. And
100%.
I'll say it, I was like that as well back in September, October. If I ended up getting an exemption that was accepted, I was willing to test and to do anything. But at the end of the day, just as easily as they gave you that exemption, they can just take it away from you. And just constantly complying and begging them for permission to participate in the school and participate in society, it really doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, and like giving in to your oppressor is not winning
No.
because you're just giving them more and more power over you. Like I remember I would send in applications and then, watch my email and just be shaking and so
Wow.
afraid because my fate was in the hands of everyone
Yep.
but myself. I had no control over the matter. I just had to trust God. I don't know. I had to trust the committee, that they
Yeah.
they had it they had a heart in them. I used to sit I'm a fairly spiritual person. I used to sit and pray that when they were like reviewing my applications like that their hearts would open with compassion, that they would see
Yeah.
beyond their like this thing because they have rules, like they have like there are 4 reasons or around like 3 or 4 reasons why someone would need an exemption from the shot, and I never perfectly fit in the criteria. That's where my problem started because
Hmm.
my condition never fit perfectly. It doesn't show up on a test. It's like it happens that no one really believes me. Some people believe me but they can't
Hmm.
prove it, and it's just so it's very limited, and they do that on purpose because they don't want people getting approved. They don't
Yeah.
want it looks bad on them too. Like I remember there was this whole thing when there was this students at the school were like they figured out oh there's 1% that are exempt, and they calculate it and they're like that's too many students. No, this many students shouldn't even be exempt. It's like
That's just awful. The
what?
whole I'm sure you're going to go on to share about this, but and your personal experiences with it, but the whole cultural ideas around this are just like you were saying before, if everyone feels so entitled to just ask you if you're vaccinated or not. They feel like it's their right to know your personal medical information, and then they feel like they're entitled to judge you for it and to like they have a say in what you do with your body. And then if you do have a reaction, they feel like they don't believe you. And it's we need to start changing the way everyone looks at these situations because it's a cultural battle that we're facing. And the way that 1% is too many that are exempt.
Yeah,
What do they really expect 100% of people to just get vaccinated?
yeah.
It's unrealistic.
It's so,
And
and especially like when you react like that, like you have any kind of allergic reaction to anything, even if you like put on a lotion, you get like a rash, you're not gonna
yeah,
like wear that again. Like, and
exactly.
that's very mild and minor.
Hmm.
So if you have like a weird, I've never reacted to anything like that in my life,
Hmm.
in that way.
I can
So
imagine it's scary. Why
it's
would you want to put
scary
yourself through
and
that
it doesn't
again?
make sense logically. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not gonna pretend I am, but it doesn't make logical sense
Hmm.
to to give yourself that again if it
Hmm.
made you sick. It just doesn't make sense.